What if the hidden truth about the harshest ordeal in the history of the Great Plains completely overturns your understanding of the limits of human endurance? We are accustomed to considering ourselves the pinnacle of evolution, but the winter of 1740 was the moment when nature itself decided to declare all-out war on humanity. It was a time of abnormal, almost extreme cold, when the thermometer dropped to minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit. In such conditions, metal becomes as brittle as glass, and your breath literally turns to icy dust before you even realize it. Imagine the scale of the catastrophe. The main sources of sustenance, huge herds of bison, had left the snow-covered territories, fleeing the ice storm, and the usual supplies in the camps began to run out as early as the fourth week of continuous, blinding blizzards. In that fateful winter, no one in their right mind could guarantee that even a single Lakota camp would survive until the first spring thaw. But here is where the most incredible part begins. In the midst of that icy hell, when death stood at every entrance to the tipi, the people did not succumb to despair. They continued to sing their traditional songs, defying the elements themselves. What was that? Madness, or the highest manifestation of a strength of spirit that we have irretrievably lost? Today we'll conduct a detailed reconstruction of those events and delve into the most hidden archives of collective memory. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the end. You'll be amazed to learn exactly which unique engineering and everyday methods allowed people not only to survive this icy apocalypse, but also to preserve their culture. We'll cover everything, from the secrets of insulating homes to how the Lakota generated energy where others saw only death. You've never seen such an in-depth exploration. Buckle up, this story will chill you to the bone. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about lies in the unique preparation of the camp for the impending natural disaster. Historical chronicles of the Little Ice Age record a sharp drop in temperature across the entire continent. The wind on the open plains swept the snow into dense drifts several meters high. The constant frost turned wood into brittle material and the ground into impenetrable stone. The Lakota tribes recognized the signs of the approaching storm in advance by the change in the direction of the north winds. Preparations for the cold began long before the first snowflakes touched the yellowed grass. Each family carefully inspected the condition of their winter dwellings. The teepee's leather covers were inspected for even the slightest damage or wear. Women used special bone needles to sew on additional layers of thick fabric. The strength of every stitch ensured protection from the biting, icy wind. Choosing a site for winter camp required a deep knowledge of the region's geography. The camp was never set up on an open hilltop, where the wind reached its maximum strength. People sought shelter in deep river valleys or dense forested lowlands. Trees served as a natural barrier, breaking up powerful currents of cold air. The proper arrangement of the yurts reduced wind strength by nearly half. The placement of the dwellings themselves within the camp also followed strict aerodynamic rules. The tipis were arranged in tight clusters, forming a sort of labyrinth for the air currents. The entrances always faced east, away from the prevailing northern and western storms. This layout protected the central passages of the camp from snowdrifts. Snow accumulated outside the living area, forming an additional protective barrier. Special attention was paid to gathering firewood to maintain a constant fire. Dry branches were collected into huge piles and stacked next to each entrance. During heavy snowfalls, movement through the forest became impossible. Having firewood within walking distance ensured uninterrupted warmth inside the dwelling. The fuel was carefully sorted by size and degree of dryness. Stocking up on provisions required a massive effort from the entire tribe throughout the autumn months. Meat was cut into thin strips and dried in the wind until it became as hard as cardboard. The dried strips were ground into a fine powder using stones for subsequent storage. This method preserved the nutritional value of the food throughout the long winter. Leather bags of food were tightly tied and hung inside the tipi. Water in the winter camp was obtained by melting clean snow. People avoided using ice from frozen rivers because of the difficulty of chopping it. Snow was collected in special woven baskets coated with resin. Near the fire, the snow quickly turned into liquid, ready for cooking. This process required maintaining a high temperature in the hearth at all times. The interior of the teepee was divided into functional zones for optimal heat utilization. Sleeping areas were located on a small raised platform along the walls of the dwelling. The central part remained open for the hearth and cooking. Smoke from the fire rose straight up through a special opening in the ceiling. Proper air circulation prevented the smoke from settling on the people. Tools for repairing clothing in dwellings were always kept warm. In the cold, sinews and leather straps lost their elasticity. Women warmed their sewing supplies with their breath or held them near the fire. Constant care of the equipment prevented breakages at critical moments. Every item in the camp had its own strictly designated place. The harsh conditions of the Little Ice Age demanded maximum organization and discipline from people. Every action was aimed at conserving energy and heat. Viewers are invited to share their thoughts in the comments about these methods of preparing for winter. Any historical fact takes on new meaning when examined in detail. Viewers should also subscribe to the channel to gain new historical insights. A secret that has only recently been revealed concerns the engineering design of the Lakota winter tipi. The winter dwelling differed significantly from the lightweight summer tents of the nomadic period. To protect against 45-degree below zero frosts, a complex system of double walls was used. The outer covering consisted of tightly sewn hides stretched over a frame of long poles. The inner part was covered with an additional layer of dense material, creating an air gap. This air gap functioned on the principle of a modern thermos, trapping heat inside. Cold air from outside could not quickly penetrate this insulating barrier. The lower edge of the inner lining lay tightly against the ground, preventing drafts. The upper part was attached to the poles at a height of about 2 meters from the floor. The air between the walls was heated by the central hearth and created a thermal curtain. A special dome called an ozan provided additional protection against cold air falling from above. The ozan was a stretched canvas located directly beneath the ceiling of the dwelling. It intercepted condensation droplets and directed them down the walls. Thanks to this dome, the heat from the fire was retained at human height. Smoke escaped unimpeded through the ventilation opening, flowing around the edges of the ozan. The ventilation flaps at the top of the teepee were adjusted using long poles. During a snowstorm, the flaps were tightly closed on the windward side. This prevented snow and ice from entering the warm interior. Proper adjustment of these valves required constant attention around the clock. The wind direction could change in a matter of minutes, requiring an immediate response. The floor inside the winter dwelling was covered with a thick layer of dry grass or pine needles. Heavy, thick-furred skins were laid on top of this flooring. This insulation prevented the cold from the frozen ground from penetrating the room. Sleeping areas were set up on special frames made of willow twigs. The raised bed provided additional protection from possible drafts at floor level. The entrance to the teepee was protected by a thick door stretched over a round willow frame. The door was suspended on sturdy leather straps and fit tightly against the opening. During severe frost, the entrance was additionally covered with another heavy hide from the inside. The resulting vestibule prevented heat from escaping instantly when a person entered or exited. They tried to open the door as infrequently as possible and only when absolutely necessary. Securing the teepee during winter storms required the use of sturdy wooden stakes. The stakes were driven deep into the ground before it froze solid. Leather straps from the outer poles were securely tied to these fastenings. In the event of a hurricane-force wind, an additional anchor strap was installed inside the teepee. It was fastened from the top of the frame to a massive stake in the center of the floor. The snow around the dwelling was not cleared down to the ground, but was used as additional insulation. People deliberately piled snowdrifts around the lower edge of the teepee. The snow effectively blocked the icy gusts of wind and retained the interior heat. The packed snow wall became as hard as stone after the first frosts. This natural insulation served as a reliable barrier throughout the long winter. Inside the dwelling, there was always a dim light, illuminated only by the harsh flames. The light from the fire reflected off the interior walls, creating a soft glow. During the day, light filtered through the thin sections of leather on the upper flaps. People grew accustomed to this lighting and were able to perform detailed work. Their eyes adapted to the conditions of constant winter darkness outside. The engineering precision in the construction of the dwelling ensured a stable temperature inside. It became possible to survive even the harshest nights of the Little Ice Age. Every detail of daily life was governed by the strict laws of survival in the cold. It remains a mystery exactly what material was used to protect footwear, from freezing instantly in the snow. The next chapter will reveal surprising methods for conserving heat during winter treks. What was found in old archives completely changes our understanding of ancient clothing technology. The secret to survival lay in layering and the proper use of natural insulators. Ordinary leather did not protect against the cold unless it was treated in a special way. Lakota women created unique winter moccasins designed for walking in deep snow. A thick layer of dried wormwood or sweetgrass was placed inside such footwear. The dry grass inside the shoes acted like a sponge, absorbing excess moisture from the feet. At the same time, it created an air cushion that kept out the cold from the ground. A supply of this grass was gathered at the end of summer and carefully stored at the camp. A person could stay out in the cold for hours without feeling their toes freeze. The grass was replaced with fresh grass after every long trip outside the teepee. Outerwear consisted of heavy cloaks sewn from whole hides with thick fur. The fur was always turned inward, closer to the body, to maximize heat retention. The outer side of the hide was thoroughly rubbed with fat to protect it from melting snow. Water simply rolled off the treated surface without being absorbed into the material. Such a cloak weighed quite a bit, but guaranteed complete insulation from the biting wind. Underneath the heavy cloak, they wore shirts and pants made of thin, softly tanned leather. A small space was always left between the layers of clothing to allow warm air to circulate. Tight-fitting clothing was considered dangerous as it restricted movement and led to freezing. Sleeves were made long to completely cover the hands while working. If necessary, the sleeves could be easily rolled up to perform precise actions. Special attention was paid to protecting the head and neck from icy gusts of wind. Special hoods were made that tightly covered the ears and the back of the head. The edges of the hood were trimmed with long fur, which protected the face from flying snow. The fur broke up the flow of frosty air, warming it before the person inhaled. This prevented frostbite of the respiratory tract at temperatures of -45 degrees. Mittens were sewn to size with plenty of extra room inside. Dry grass or soft plant down was also stuffed into the mittens for insulation. They were fastened with a long leather cord looped around the neck. This allowed the mittens to be quickly removed for precise work and prevented them from getting lost in the snow. Losing warm mittens in winter meant instant frostbite on the fingers. All winter clothing was regularly dried over the warm air from the fire. Moisture from breathing or snow accumulated on the surface of the hides and could freeze. Leather items were never hung too close to an open fire. From intense heat, the leather would shrink, lose its elasticity, and crack. Drying took several hours and required constant monitoring. Sewing winter gear was considered a vital skill on which the survival of the entire family depended. Strong seams were made using tendons, which did not rot or stretch when exposed to moisture. Needles were carved from hard bones and carefully polished with stones. Every stitch was made to ensure maximum strength during active movement. Reliable clothing was the main barrier between a person and the merciless winter. The Lakota winter uniform had no unnecessary decorative details that might weigh down the structure. All elements served exclusively practical purposes of preserving life in an extreme environment. Functionality was always prioritized over appearance during this harsh period. People moved slowly and deliberately so as not to sweat under their heavy furs. In such cold, sweat instantly turned into a layer of ice. Unique insulation methods demonstrate a deep understanding of the laws of physics and the properties of materials. This knowledge was accumulated over decades and passed down by word of mouth. Every detail of the wardrobe was perfected through trial and error. Viewers are invited to like this video as a sign of respect for the wisdom of the ancient masters. Supporting the channel helps us produce more documentary investigations like this one. The secret for which people pay thousands lies in the proper technique for maintaining a winter fire. Fires in a teepee were never lit haphazardly, using the first branches that came to hand. They used a special type of poplar wood that produced a lot of heat and minimal smoke. Damp firewood or resinous tree species could fill the dwelling with acrid smoke. Clean air inside the dwelling was just as important as the heat itself. Maintaining the fire was a true art, requiring round-the-clock vigilance. The flames were never allowed to rise too high, so as not to damage the ozone. The ideal fire consisted of an even layer of glowing red embers. The embers radiated a steady, gentle heat that evenly warmed the entire space of the teepee. At night, the fire was slightly smothered by covering part of the embers with hot ash. The ash acted as a thermal insulator, retaining the wood's heat until morning. In the morning, it was enough to rake away the ash and add a few dry branches for the flames to reignite. This method helped conserve scarce fuel during prolonged snowstorms. Firewood was always stacked in a special pyramid shape to maximize oxygen flow. The movement of air from the bottom edge of the stack to the ventilation opening ensured a steady draft. To start a fire, they used the ancient method of rubbing dry wooden sticks together. Sparks fell onto tinder made from dried mushrooms or down, which had been prepared in advance. The tinder was carefully stored in special waterproof horn containers. The ability to quickly start a fire was considered a basic skill for every camp resident. Even on the darkest and coldest night, the hearth had to burn continuously. In winter, the fire served not only to provide warmth, but also as the center of social life. The family gathered around it for meals and evening conversations. Moccasins and items of clothing were dried on the hot stones surrounding the fire. Roots were often baked in the ashes, or frozen pieces of provisions were warmed there. The hearth became the true heart of the dwelling, radiating life in defiance of the frost outside. On the coldest nights, stones from the fire were used as additional heaters. Smooth river boulders were heated to a high temperature in the flames. They were then carefully carried with wooden tongs and placed near the sleeping areas. The stones slowly released their stored heat over the course of several hours. This created an additional zone of comfort in the coldest corners of the dwelling. The amount of firewood was strictly rationed, as every trip into the forest for fuel carried a risk. Blizzards could last for weeks, hiding familiar landmarks under a layer of snow. People tried not to stray far from the camp unless absolutely necessary. The stockpiles of firewood near the teepee gradually dwindled with each week of bad weather. Conserving fuel became a matter of survival for the entire encampment. Constant monitoring of the hearth required attention to the slightest changes in the weather. A strengthening wind forced people to adjust the ventilation flaps at the top of the teepee. If the flaps were set incorrectly, a gust of wind could blow smoke back into the room. This led to severe coughing and eye irritation for everyone present. Experienced people knew how to adjust the draft based on the sound of the wind outside. The fire also helped dry out the moisture produced by people's breath in the enclosed space. Condensation settled on the walls and could turn into frost, cooling the air. The steady heat from the fire prevented ice from accumulating on the interior lining. Thanks to this, the tipi remained dry and suitable for long-term habitation. Combating humidity was a constant routine during the winter months. Precise calculation and careful management of the fire helped them survive the darkest periods of the Little Ice Age. The question arises as to whether food supplies were sufficient for such a long period of isolation. In the next chapter, we will learn how people actually coped with this terrible weather. Proper nutrition played a key role in maintaining the body's internal heat. Every meal was calculated with mathematical precision. The food system at the winter camp was based on the strict rationing of pre-stock resources. Fresh food was unavailable due to the lack of vegetation and the migration of major herds to the south. The main food source was pemmican, a high-calorie mixture of dried meat and fat. This mixture had incredible nutritional density and could be stored for years. A small handful of pemmican was enough to replenish energy for an entire day. Pemmican was often mixed with dried berries, which added essential vitamins to the diet. The berries were gathered in late summer and dried in the sun until all moisture had evaporated. This vitamin supply helped prevent illnesses associated with the monotonous winter diet. Food was mostly eaten warm to provide additional body heat. Thick soups were cooked from pemmican using melted snow. Cooking required minimal use of scarce fuel. Water in leather containers was brought to a boil by placing hot stones inside them. The stones quickly transferred heat to the liquid, eliminating the need to hang pots over an open fire. This ancient method was safe and effective in confined spaces. Hot broth instantly warmed a person from the inside after working in the cold. By the fourth week of severe blizzards, supplies began to dwindle noticeably. Rations were strictly controlled and distributed according to the work being performed. People who spent more time in the cold received an extra portion of fat. Physical activity inside the camp was kept to a minimum to conserve calories. The less energy a person expended, the less food they needed. Meals were served twice a day, in the morning and shortly before dusk. The morning meal provided the strength needed to perform daily routine duties. The evening meal helped the body generate heat during the long, cold night. During breaks, people could drink hot water infused with pine needles or tree bark. This drink maintained hydration and had a mild, invigorating effect. Protecting provisions from spoilage and dampness was the most important task for teepee dwellers. Leather bags of food were hung on poles to keep moisture from the ground from reaching them. Being suspended also protected the supplies from small pests seeking shelter from the cold. Regular inspection of the bags allowed any damage to be noticed in time. The loss of even a small portion of the supplies could be fatal for the entire family. A high-fat content in the winter diet was vital for survival. Fat was the main source of energy, allowing the body to cope with sub-zero temperatures. In extreme cold, the human metabolism shifted to actively burning calories. Without enough high-calorie food, the body would quickly become hypothermic. Pemmican was ideally suited to these physiological demands of the harsh winter. Dining utensils were made of horn or hardwood and were carefully stored. After every meal, bowls and spoons were thoroughly wiped with dry grass. Water was not used to wash the utensils, as firewood had to be conserved for heating. Keeping the utensils clean helped prevent digestive problems in the isolated environment. The health of every individual was the key to the safety of the entire camp. Discipline in food distribution helped prevent panic even on the hardest days, when the blizzard showed no sign of letting up. People understood that supplies would last exactly until spring if they followed the established rules. The camp elders ensured the even distribution of provisions among all the teepee. A sense of community and mutual support grew stronger as they overcame difficulties together. No one was left to face the problem of food shortages alone. A rational approach to nutrition was an integral part of the indigenous people's culture of survival. Precise portion calculations and high-calorie foods made the impossible possible. People did not merely survive, but also maintain their physical fitness until the arrival of warmer weather. The winter diet represented a perfect balance between available resources and the body's needs. Every ounce of pemmican translated into an extra hour of life. Here is what happens behind the closed doors of a winter teepee during days-long snowstorms. When temperatures drop to critical levels, life inside the camp follows a strict schedule. The absence of external distractions forced people to focus on small but important routines. Constant work distracted them from anxious thoughts about the prolonged winter and dwindling supplies. Time passed slowly, measured only by the number of logs tossed into the fire. The inhabitants spent most of the daylight hours making and repairing equipment. Repairing weapons, braiding new ropes, and carving wooden utensils never stopped for a single day. Leather straps were regularly greased to prevent them from drying out in the warm air of the tipi. The men polished stone and bone arrowheads, preparing for the warmth of spring. Every movement was measured, without unnecessary fuss or haste. Women engaged in embroidery and the decoration of clothing, using porcupine quills and natural dyes. This painstaking work required good lighting, so it was done during the day near the fire. Creating beautiful patterns on clothing upheld aesthetic traditions even in the hardest of times. Art brought elements of joy and creativity in a monotonous daily life. Items created during the long winter were distinguished by their exceptional craftsmanship. An important part of the routine was constantly checking the integrity of the dwelling from the inside. At the slightest change in the sound of the wind, the pole fastenings and the tension of the leather covering were checked. If a gap appeared somewhere, it was immediately plugged with bundles of dry grass or scraps of hide. A draft in 45-degree frost could chill the room in a matter of minutes. The responsibility for keeping the space warm fell on every member of the group. Physical exercises in the confined space were also part of the daily routine. To prevent their muscles from atrophying due to lack of movement, people did stretching and joint exercises. This helped maintain blood circulation and keep the extremities warm. Active games were off limits to avoid kicking up dust and accidentally knocking over dishes or the fire. Physical control helped maintain psychological balance as well. When the storm briefly subsided, the men went out to clear the paths between the teepees. Moving around the camp was necessary for exchanging information and maintaining social ties. The snow was packed down with wide wooden shovels until it formed a solid crust of ice. The resulting trenches protected a person walking through them from the wind at ground level. The depth of these snow corridors could exceed a person's height, Clearing the ventilation valves of snow that had accumulated on the outside was a regular but dangerous task. A person had to go out into the cold with a long pole and carefully knock off the ice buildup. This had to be done quickly to prevent hypothermia and avoid damaging the leather covering. Frozen leather became brittle and could crack from a strong blow. Successfully completing this task ensured a supply of fresh air inside. Nighttime brought with it intensifying cold and the need for extra warmth. People would go to sleep huddled close together under a thick layer of furs. The breath of the sleepers further warmed the small space beneath the blankets. The person on watch by the fire made sure the flames didn't die out and listened for sounds from outside. The crackling of freezing trees in the forest served as a reminder of the harsh reality beyond the thin walls. Strict discipline and the predictability of each day created a sense of security within the confined space. The knowledge that everyone was busy with their tasks instilled confidence in the future. Working together united people, transforming scattered families into a single mechanism for survival. Routine served as a kind of shield, deflecting the chaos of the raging natural elements. The camp lived by its own internal clock, independent of snowstorms. Daily duties helped people maintain their composure under conditions of prolonged isolation. The question arises, what methods were used to maintain the tribe's psychological well-being? In the next chapter, we will learn how people coped with this terrible weather on an emotional level. Maintaining high morale was no less important than having firewood. Methods for combating despondency were passed down from generation to generation. Snow in the Lakota winter camp was seen not only as an obstacle, but also as a building material. Deep snow drifts reliably covered the ground, creating an insulating layer against extreme cold. Their attitude towards snow was pragmatic. Its properties were used to improve living conditions. Dense, compacted snow became an excellent platform for movement. Loose, powdery snow, on the other hand, was used to seal cracks and create protective barriers. Moving through deep snow required the use of special snowshoes. Snowshoes were woven from sturdy willow branches and raw leather straps. The wide surface distributed a person's weight, preventing them from sinking into the snow. Properly made snowshoes significantly conserved energy when patrolling the camp area. Walking in them required a certain amount of skill and a wide stride. Snowshoes were always stored in a dry place to prevent the leather straps from stretching. Before heading out into the cold, they were carefully inspected for damage. A broken snowshoe far from camp could lead to serious trouble in the loose snow. Traveling without them slowed down the pace several times over and led to rapid exhaustion. Therefore, every adult had their own individually fitted pair. Sleds were used to move heavy loads, such as chopped firewood. Sleds were made from two long poles connected by crossbars. On smooth snow, this design glided with minimal resistance. A person could pull a weight significantly greater than their own body mass. The sleds left behind a wide, firm track that was easy to walk on. Studying tracks in the snow remained an important skill even during periods of severe cold. Experienced trackers could determine changes in the structure of the snowpack by the shape of the indentations. The appearance of an ice crust indicated a brief warming or a change in the wind. Small details made it possible to predict the weather several days in advance. Reading the snow surface was akin to reading nature's open book. During heavy blizzards, visibility dropped to just a few meters, creating the effect of a white haze. Navigating in such conditions was incredibly difficult, even within the camp. To avoid getting lost, people stretched ropes between the nearest tipis. By holding on to this guiding rope, one could safely reach their neighbors. Blindly relying only on touch, people found their way through the blizzard. The danger of snowdrifts lay in the possibility of completely blocking the entrances to dwellings. By morning, snow could bury a teepee up to halfway, blocking the exit. The camp's inhabitants always kept shovels inside so they could dig out the door. The clearing process began from the inside, carefully pushing the massive snow to the sides. Emerging to the surface after a night of snowfall felt like being born from an icy cocoon. Compacted snow also served as an excellent material for creating temporary shelter screens. Semicircular walls of snow blocks were erected on the windward side of the fire pits, which were set up outside during calm weather. The screen reflected the fire's heat onto the people sitting there and protected the flames from random gusts. Working with snow continued throughout the winter months. People were constantly improving the snow infrastructure of their camp. The temperature inside a deep snowdrift always remained higher than in the open wind. Knowledge of this physical fact helped them survive in the event of an unexpected stop, far from a warm teepee. A person could dig a small cave in the snowdrift and wait out the fiercest squall of the storm. Inside such a niche, a microclimate was created, warmed by body heat. Paradoxically, snow acted as a savior from the icy elements. Understanding the mechanics of the winter landscape made the Lakota camp an impregnable fortress against the cold. Their interaction with the snow was based on respect and knowledge of its characteristics. The elements did not defeat the people because they had learned to harness its power for their own benefit. Every day brought new challenges, but accumulated experience helped them cope. The snow-covered plain remained a home that demanded specific rules for living. Moral resilience played a crucial role in survival during that unprecedentedly harsh winter. That winter, no one knew if the camp would make it to spring, but people continued to sing their traditional songs. The singing held deep psychological and spiritual meaning for each participant. The rhythmic sounds filling the warm teepee created an atmosphere of unity and tranquility. The voices blended together, drowning out the howling wind beyond the thin leather walls. Evening gatherings around the campfire were the main way to maintain sanity during prolonged isolation. The elders told ancient legends about the creation of the world and the great heroes of the past. These stories reminded listeners that their ancestors had faced similar trials and emerged victorious. The stories not only entertained, but also served as a kind of code of conduct in times of crisis. Words possessed a healing power, driving away fear and despondency. Songs were often accompanied by the steady tapping of wooden sticks or light drums. The rhythm helped synchronize the breathing of those present, inducing a sense of collective trance. On the coldest nights, the melodies became more drawn out and meditative. They calmed the mind, helping people endure physical discomfort more easily. Music therapy was an integral part of the winter life of the Plains' native peoples. An important element of social interaction was the exchange of jokes and good-natured banter. Laughter relieved internal tension and lightened the atmosphere in the cramped quarters. Humor was seen as a sign of strength and the ability to withstand adversity. Jokes focused on everyday trifles, avoiding serious issues like food supplies or the weather. The ability to smile in 45-degree sub-zero temperatures was a testament to an unbreakable spirit. The older generation kept an eye on the emotional state of everyone in the camp. If someone became apathetic, they were drawn into the general conversation or given an important routine task. A sense of self-worth and usefulness restored a person's faith in their own strength. No one was left alone with their dark thoughts during the long winter nights. Mutual support functioned as an invisible psychological shield for the tribe. Nonverbal communication played no less of a role in maintaining an atmosphere of calm. Gestures of support, calm glances, and confident movements conveyed confidence better than words. In a confined space, people learned to read each other's emotions through the slightest changes in facial expressions. Empathy allowed them to prevent any conflicts arising from the cramped conditions in time. Harmony in relationships was valued just as highly as the availability of provisions. The transfer of knowledge from elders to the younger generation never ceased for a single day. The younger generation listened attentively to instructions on the rules of life in an extreme environment. This continuity ensured that future generations would be able to survive similar cataclysms. Winter became a harsh school of life, where lessons were learned through practice. The experience of the Little Ice Age became permanently embedded in the cultural code of the Lakota people. Emotional solidarity proved to be the very secret weapon that saved the camp from destruction. Songs continued to be sung, even when it seemed that supplies would not last until spring. This phenomenon demonstrates the incredible strength of the human spirit in the face of catastrophe. Moral fortitude transformed survival into a conscious act of resistance against the elements. The camp survived not only on pemmican and firewood, but also on faith in the future. Over time, the harsh conditions required regular adaptation of the winter camp's infrastructure. The constant pressure of a thick layer of snow on the walls of the dwellings forced them to reinforce the frame from the inside. The men installed additional supports made of sturdy poles in the most vulnerable parts of the tipi. This prevented the leather covering from sagging under the weight of frozen precipitation. Engineering monitoring of the structure's condition was carried out continuously. Changes in indoor humidity required fine-tuning of the ventilation. If a severe storm was followed by a frosty lull, the vents at the top of the dwelling were immediately readjusted. Proper air circulation prevented frost from forming on the interior walls, preserving the insulating effect. People learned to gauge atmospheric pressure by the behavior of the smoke rising from the hearth. A straight column of smoke foreshadowed the continuation of severe cold. Monitoring of food supplies reached mathematical precision by midwinter. The remaining portions of pemmican were recounted and distributed based on the estimated time until the weather warmed. The rationing regime was tightened without panic, as a natural and necessary process. Every camp resident understood the importance of adhering to the new calorie intake standards. Strict accounting prevented the sudden depletion of food reserves. Special attention was paid to the condition of footwear after every brief outing. Snow clinging to the moccasins was carefully scraped off with wooden scrapers before it had a chance to melt. Moisture was devastating to the leather, making it stiff and unsuitable for wear. The shoes were dried slowly, away from the direct heat of the fire. Caring for one's feet was tantamount to caring for one's own life. The state of the firewood supply required constant sorting of the wood by burning quality. Large, long smoldering logs were set aside for the coldest hours of the night. Small twigs were used to quickly melt snow and boil water in the morning. Fuel efficiency was maximized through proper heat distribution. Not a single splinter was wasted in the face of the most severe shortage. Observation of the environment through small holes in the teepee never ceased. People noted the thickness of the ice crust on the trees and the direction of the rare clouds. This data was compiled to create a forecast for the next few days. Nature did not forgive mistakes, so any changes were analyzed with the utmost care. The tracker's experience evolved into the science of weather forecasting. Working with leather to create new items gradually slowed down due to the need to conserve fat. Greasing leather goods required the use of food resources, which were running low. Repairs were limited to only the most critical parts of clothing or equipment. Needles and sinews were hidden in special bone cases until better times arrived. Priorities shifted exclusively toward maintaining vital signs. The winter camp functioned like a clock, where every cog knew its place. The absence of chaos and bustle helped preserve the inner energy of the entire group. Movements became economical, conversations quiet, and actions as precise as possible. People fell into the rhythm of prolonged hibernation while maintaining a clear consciousness. This ability to adapt became the key to overcoming temperature anomalies. A systematic approach to survival transformed the tribe into a single, indestructible organism. Strict rules based on an understanding of the laws of physics worked flawlessly. Even the harshest frosts could not break the defense system built up over the years. The camp remained standing, covered in snow, preserving warmth and life within. The engineering genius of the indigenous peoples was most vividly demonstrated in this struggle. The first signs of approaching spring appeared imperceptibly, requiring keen eyesight and experience. The shift in the sky's hue to a softer, bluish color signaled the retreat of the polar anticyclones. The wind shifted direction, carrying the faint scent of melting ice from the southern territories. The air became less biting, allowing one to breathe deeply without a protective fur coat. These small details instilled hope in people exhausted by the long winter. The structure of the snow around the winter camp began to change under the influence of the first warm rays. The hard crust became loose and heavy, sinking under its own weight. The snow screens around the teepees lost their shape, gradually turning into shapeless drifts. During the day, the first drops of long-awaited water dripped from the edges of the ventilation flaps. The sound of falling drops became the most joyful music for the entire camp. The milder climate allowed people to spend more time outside their dwellings. The men went out on long reconnaissance missions, checking the condition of the surrounding forests and rivers. The snow cover in the forest settled, opening up access to the lower branches of trees and shrubs. The discovery of traces of returning small game became a cause for general excitement. Nature was slowly awakening from the icy torpor of the Little Ice Age. By this point, food supplies had reached their absolute minimum. Careful planning had allowed them to stretch the pemmican out exactly until the moment the ice began to retreat. The men felt tired but remained fully fit and healthy. Thanks to strict discipline, Not a single case of critical hypothermia occurred. The survival system proved its ideal effectiveness in practice. The removal of the teepee's winter insulation took place in stages to avoid sudden drafts. The lower edges of the inner lining were gradually lifted to allow fresh air to flow in. The heavy winter doors were replaced with lighter curtains made of thin leather. The hearth continued to burn, but now it required much less wood to maintain the temperature. The air in the dwelling became fresh and filled with the sense of the awakening forest. The women took their winter clothes and sleeping skins out into the bright spring sun. Direct sunlight dried the fur better than any fire and removed accumulated moisture. Items were carefully beaten with thin twigs to remove dust and small debris. Caring for the equipment after winter ensured its preservation until the next cold spell. The camp took on a lively, bustling appearance after months of forced silence. Inspecting the campsite after the snow melted helped assess the quality of the chosen location. People made sure that meltwater bypassed the tents without flooding the floors. The correct slope of the terrain directed the moisture toward the riverbed. This experience was committed to memory by the elders for planning future winter camps. Geography once again confirmed its status as the main ally in the struggle against the elements. Preparations for the move began immediately after the snow had completely melted from the plains. The winter camp had fulfilled its purpose, protecting the people from the abnormal cold of the 1740s. The tipi frames were dismantled and the poles were loaded onto sleds for transport. The people left the place that had become a reliable fortress for them with gratitude. The tribe was ready to follow the returning herds toward a new cycle of life. The winter they had endured became a legend, passed down by word of mouth through many generations. It proved that harmony with nature lies not in struggle, but in understanding its laws. Engineering ingenuity, strict order, and mutual aid proved stronger than record-breaking cold. The Lakota people demonstrated an unparalleled ability to adapt to extreme environmental conditions. This story stands as a timeless testament to human resilience and wisdom. The cold of the Little Ice Age could not destroy the life pulsing beneath the blanket of snow. The songs sung in the teepee heralded the arrival of spring long before its physical arrival. Every preserved ember and every ounce of pemmican became part of a great victory. The Great Plains once again opened their expanses to nomadic routes and summer camps. The tribe continued on its way, enriched by a unique experience of survival. Viewers are invited to share their impressions and suggest topics for future videos in the comments. Viewers should also subscribe to the channel so they don't miss new in-depth dives into history.